Welcome back to Real Clear Radio Hour, brought to you by the Competitive Enterprise Institute. I'm your host, Bill Frezza. Joining us for the second half of our show is World Wrestling Entertainment star Glenn Kane Jacobs, who we grabbed backstage at the Young Americans for Liberty Convention in Washington, D.C., prior to his addressing the students. I have to ask you, Glenn, it's been probably 50 years since I've watched a professional wrestling match. It was on a black and white television. It was Haystacks Calhoun versus Bruno Sammartino from the old Madison Square Garden. Has wrestling changed any since then?
It's changed a lot, but that's a classic. Let me tell you, yeah. But it has changed a lot. One thing, we're in color now. It has changed a lot. During the early 2000s, WWE, the company that I work for, and the dominant company in our industry, of course, we were the hottest thing in entertainment altogether.
Yeah, it was everywhere.
It was huge, right? And off of that, we've been able to really do some different things. We have a thing now called the WWE Network, which is revolutionary. It's a website platform that both streams live content, but also on-demand content. And I understand it's the first platform to do that. Okay, and it's a subscriber-based platform that's really revolutionized because I think people have migrated sort of away from their TVs to their computers for their entertainment.
Sure, they consume media so differently now.
Right, exactly.
It used to be at 7 o'clock, you had to tune in. There was 3 stations. The fight was coming on. If you missed it, you missed it.
Right. Now everything's gone on demand. Now, though, people are migrating away from TV, and you see this especially overseas, to their mobile devices, to their phones, to their iPad, and that sort of thing. And my boss, of course, is Vince McMahon. I believe that his real genius has always been he gets ahead of the curve of entertainment technology. If you go to www.payperview.com, you are redirected to WWE.com. And the guy didn't invent pay-per-view, but he perfected it. We were streaming content on our website in 1996.
That's very early.
Yeah. Our website's enormous, of course, penetrates all through the globe. Again, he saw an opportunity with the internet and ran with it. And now with the WWE Network, it's won all sorts of awards as being a pioneer and a leader in its field.
It's a fascinating form of entertainment. Now, you wrestled under the name Kane, which was a bad guy or a good guy? I can never keep track.
Both at various times,
no kidding.
And that's what happens a lot in our industry. It really depends on the popularity. And sometimes when you're a bad guy, the badder a guy you become, the more the people like you, right?
And there's a range of characters like it was in the past, right? And they bring them in, they bring them up. And how do they stage manage the competitions, so the career, sort of from the career development angle as you blossom?
Well, we have writing crew just like every other TV show, and our show really is, that's another thing that's changed. It's gone from more emphasis on the attendance at live events to more on the ratings, advertising.
So it's less box office than it used to be.
Right. It still is. The box office is huge. We have our biggest event of the year is WrestleMania. We have about 100,000 people last year at AT&T Stadium in Dallas, coming from all over the world. I think the gate was in excess of $8 million for the live gate.
For that one event?
For that one event, yeah. But then, of course, you have to consider that it was also broadcast on pay-per-view. And then one of the driving factors behind the WWE Network is the fact that all of our pay-per-views you can get those for free. They're part of your subscription with the WWE Network. So the box office is still a huge driver, but it's changed a lot in that it used to be TV was specifically designed to drive people to the live events. And now it's a little different. We're trying to get ratings. We're trying to get those advertising dollars.
So the art form itself is part acting, part athletics, part acrobatics. How do you get into your character? How do you communicate with your opponent? Because you do stuff that could hurt people.
Right. A lot of it is just being competent performers. I've been doing it for a long time. We receive training, of course, in how to do different things. some of it is trade secrets. So I can't let you in on some of that.
It's
right?
like the stage musicians, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, sure.
So I can't let you in on all that.
They still do flying drop kicks, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we do a lot of stuff. We have a couple pay-per-view events, which are very special because they're completely over the top. We really go out of our way to do some spectacular things. But, yeah, for the most part, though, we're all trained. And once you understand how a move works, it's up to both parties to execute it safely.
Now, you're enormous. I mean, the PR says 7 foot. I don't know if that's quite accurate, but you look 7 foot to me.
I'm a big guy.
and how many years you been doing this?
I've actually been about 25 years, and I've been with WWE for 21 years.
That's a long time for a profession like that, isn't it?
It is. I think that because I am a big guy, frankly, I don't have to fall down as much as the smaller guys. Yeah, and I've been fortunate. I haven't been injured. I take very good care of myself. I've only had a couple of bad injuries that have kept me out for a substantial period of time. But even in those cases, they weren't career-threatening things. It was just I broke my hand and broke my arm, that sort of thing.
They ever throw you out of the ring the way they used to back in the day?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, we're actually, as far as the style goes, it's a lot more physical probably than we watched it 40 years ago.
Interesting.
Yeah. What did attract me to this business is the fact that it is a blend of theatrics and athletics.
You started out as a conventional athlete, didn't you?
Right. I played basketball and football in college. At that time, WWE was super hot. This was in the late 80s.
Did you get recruited?
I'm sorry. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I actually almost played professional football, but I had blown my knee out. So that was the end of that.
In terms of taking care of your body and your head, you're probably better off not having gone into professional football.
Yes, it's one of those deals where when one door closes, often a better door at least cracks open, and that's what happened with me.
Now, tell us a little bit more about the business model. It's not prize fighting, right? Where in professional boxing, you're playing for the purse.
Right.
It's not football or basketball where how does the money all work?
We're all have contracts with WWE, and they're essentially performance-based contracts because the better the company does, the better we all do. I mean, we don't necessarily have formal profit sharing, but we do. Our pay is based off of the gate. It's based off of merchandise, based off of pay-per-view sales.
So there's goal alignment in terms of building your character.
Yes.
Do you have a fan club and that sort of thing?
Yes. And they do a lot of that stuff for us, actually. Right.
So they have mechanisms in place. But you're an independent contractor?
Yes.
So I understand there was some controversy about that.
That has come up quite often, the fact that we're independent contractors, but we have an exclusive contract with WWE. But we're not employees. And I'll tell you a story which illustrates, unfortunately, a lot of media bias that I think all of us realize exists. I did an interview for the New York Times a few years ago, and I knew going in that it was going to be a hit piece on WWE.
Really?
And part of it was about the status of us being independent contractors.
You were being exploited.
Yes. and it's funny because the argument was, yes, we were being exploited, and I'm sitting there going, how am I being exploited? I get paid really good money to do this. Yeah, I get fed well. Basically, the gist of the article is you guys should be employees. Well, my argument was, as an independent contractor, say with my retirement plan, I have the freedom to choose what I want to do with my money. I'm not locked into a 401k. I can do whatever I want.
Or a company pension plan.
Right,
Think about that for a minute.
Yeah, those turn out so well often, right? If we had a free market in health care, I would be able to shop around for my health insurance, which, unfortunately, because the government's so involved, that limits that. But because I am an independent contractor, I have a lot more freedom with my finances than an employee. So I talked with this reporter for 45 minutes about this. And it was funny, at one point he said, I never thought about that. I never considered that.
So you felt like you were getting through?
Yeah, I thought so, until the article came out. And the article goes through and essentially slams WWE, says they're exploiting the wrestlers because we're independent contractors, so they don't have to give us fringe benefits as if we were employees, and has quotes from basically disgruntled wrestlers from the past. Never mentions me. I talked to him for 45 minutes.
And you're on the cutting room floor.
Never mentions me. Yes. And turns around and says, we reached out to other wrestlers for comment, but they refused because of fear of retribution from the McMahons. Unbelievable.
I'm amazed every time I read a news story or hear about a news story where I was there or part of an event. If they're 50% accurate, they're probably getting it pretty good.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. And, of course, the New York Times is going to have that economic liberal bias, right? And it was clear as day in that one.
We're here at the Catholic University of America, speaking with Glenn Jacobs, who wrestles under the name Kane for WWE, at the Young Americans for Liberty convention. And I've got to ask you, Glenn, what are you doing here?
I'm speaking here.
How did you get on the agenda?
Probably almost 20 years ago at this point, I went through a bit of a political awakening. I had always been interested in politics. My parents were sort of old school Goldwater conservatives, okay? One of my first memories, oddly enough, is we were driving. I grew up in Missouri, and we were driving down the highway and went under some power lines, the big, huge metal
high-tension wires.
Yeah, the high-tension wires, right? And I'll never forget, my mom started talking about how evil eminent domain was. Okay?
Just out of the blue.
Yeah, just out of the blue. At least that's how I remember it, right?
Well, at least she wasn't talking about fluoride.
Right, yeah. But in all seriousness, and that's one of my earliest memories, was that my folks weren't necessarily the kind that would sit around and talk about politics at the dinner table, but nevertheless, as I look back, I realized that's what they were. So I grew up relatively conservative, but on the other hand, as far as people's personal lives, I didn't care. As long as you weren't hurting anyone else,
sure,
I figured it's your life. Yeah, it's your life. So when I got to college, I got the socialist indoctrination, and I was like, well, some of this stuff makes sense. But then I got out in the real world, and I was like, well, how is it that the harder you work, the less of your money you get to keep? That's strange. That doesn't seem to work.
Now, where'd you go to school?
I went to school at Northeast Missouri State University. It's now Truman State University.
And what'd you study?
English Lit. Oddly enough.
English Lit.
Yeah, I have a degree in English
wrestling.
Yeah, okay. But it helps me because I read Shakespeare. So, which actually at the time, of course, Shakespeare is considered lowbrow entertainment for the masses.
Back then.
Yeah. So it's sort of funny how things come back around. But in any case, for a while I thought I must be a Republican, I must be a conservative, but I must be a Democrat, I must be a liberal. Yeah, and then a fella said, well, you sound like a libertarian. I was like, well, dude, don't call me names. I'll fight you right here, right? He's like, no. And then he sort of explained to me that there was this third way, and instead of looking at things right versus left, we should look at things as freedom versus authoritarianism.
Did he start handing you books?
Not at that point, but I did that on my own, actually. And I just got very interested, and I started reading prolifically about these issues. I came across guys, of course, like Judge Napolitano from Fox News, Ron Paul, and then I got interested in Austrian economics. I never took an economics course in my life, okay? In college, never took anything. So I was very intimidated by the term economics. And then I started studying Austrian economics, and for those of you who aren't familiar with that, Austrian economics has nothing to do with econometrics, which is what everybody studies now.
Math.
Right, there's not a lot of math. It's all based on reality, which is human action. People act. And out of that, you can derive certain axioms. They act in ways that will bring them psychic benefit. And like I said, out of that, we can derive certain axioms like the law of subjective marginal utility, right? So anyway, I was like, wow, I'm an economist now.
This makes sense.
But yeah, it did make sense.
Have you seen the Keynes versus Hayek rap videos?
It's awesome, right?
This got millions of views.
Yeah, it's awesome. And it shows you the difference. I think Keynesianism, of course, should be confined to a laboratory because in the real world, you can't measure these things, whereas Austrian economics actually works. And of course, a lot of the reason that we face many of the economic dilemmas that we do is because the dominant paradigm now is the Keynesian.
Sure, and we're paying the price. We're paying the price in stagnation.
All these booms and busts. I mean, that's exactly what the Hayek versus Keynes rap is about.
That's right.
You read Hayek, you read Rothbard, you read Mises, and you're like, wow, it's a completely different world than everything that I hear and everything that I've been taught.
Now, do you talk to your wrestling fans about Hayek and Mises?
A little bit, yes.
No kidding.
I think people respect where I'm coming from and the fact that I do talk about these things because I do think they're very important.
Are they okay with you stepping out of character? Because when you're in character, you have these crazy costumes and you got to be mean and
but they realize that it is a character, and then the person behind that. We're I like to tell people, most of us have gone to college and at least can put a coherent sentence together.
So what are you here to talk to the college kids about?
I'm actually going to talk to them a wide-ranging speech, I believe, but I'm actually going to talk to them about being effective communicators and how to spread our message in a way that's effective.
That people can hear it.
Yeah, that's one of the things I'm going to talk about, too. It's not so much important what you say as what the audience hears is the most important thing. And there's also things, of course, not worrying about debating with people. We need to persuade people.
Right, move away from that direct confrontation.
Yeah, and that's what I see so much of in politics now, and it's a huge problem in the country. I was on a local talk show this morning, and we talked about how it's all divisive and it's all division. And this group shouts at this group, and we yell and scream at each other, and then we end up shooting each other lately. Instead of us talking like civil human beings.
It's as bad as I've ever seen it.
Yes, it is.
I actually remember the Kennedy-Nixon election. I was 6 years old, and my parents were involved. And I got involved in the McGovern campaign. And, of course, this was Vietnam War time. Right. There was riots in the streets. Even compared to then, I don't think I've seen anything like it is today.
No.
We've been divided into tribes, and they're shouting at each other.
Yes. What people don't get, again, it's not liberal versus conservative. It ain't Republican, it's Democrat. It's the political elites against everyone else.
Do you think this election will help people realize that?
I think they're already realizing that. I think 4 years ago, Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders would have been laughed off the stage, and Trump is the Republican nominee. Sanders
got awful close.
Yeah, he got really close. People are looking for something. They're searching for something. They just don't know quite what it is yet. And a guy like Trump, what he's been able to do is he's really been able to exploit that for his purposes, as well as what Sanders did too.
He sure pulled the party to the left.
I think now, people are looking at this election, and of course, the greatest asset that both candidates have is they're not the other one. And that's what's really sad is there's no longer, this is what I think, this is the direction that I want to take the country. It's all, oh my gosh, if Hillary gets elected,
it's the end of the world.
If Trump gets elected, it's the end of the world. So vote for me because I'm the lesser of two evils. And that's a very sad state for this country to be in.
I've watched the Libertarian Party for a long time. And I remember meeting the candidate at a coffee clutch at a neighbor's house. Because they could get all 9 people to show up for these things. Typically, the Libertarian candidate is an educator.
Yes.
They go out, they give speeches, and maybe they get 1%, of the vote. Do you think it'll be different this time?
I think it is going to be different. I don't think, unfortunately, because of the structure of the Libertarian Party, it's just never going to be a player, okay? But I think if we take the path that guys like Ron Paul and Rand Paul and Thomas Massie and Justin Amash have taken of trying to pull the Republican Party back towards Goldwater, even towards Reagan.
Well, at least toward the Constitution.
Yeah, the Constitution.
Remember that?
Yeah, it would be a really great thing. In the debates, you will never hear the word Constitution come up, guaranteed this year. So, unfortunately, no, I don't think that the Libertarian Party, I think that Gary Johnson's going to do well. He may even get in the presidential debates, which would be awesome because people are going to hear a different perspective than what the other two people are giving. But I don't think that it's going to be a breakthrough year for the Libertarian Party. I still think that the work should be done within the Republican Party.
Well, it's interesting. We heard Justin Amash speak last night. I've never heard this kid before. He's my son's age, so I can call him a kid.
He is a U.S. congressman,
I know. And I did call, when I met him, I did call him congressman.
Okay.
But boy, was he impressive.
Right.
And calm demeanor and happy warrior. He reminded me of the happy warrior, and the kids were on their feet. It was quite a spectacle.
And Massey's the same way.
I haven't met him.
He's a great spokesman, and same deal. These guys. I guess one of the things that separates us is we're not angry. We just want you to listen to us, but we're not screaming and yelling.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting, and that goes back. I guess that goes back to Reagan's approach to getting heard.
Right, and if nothing else, the country needs a unifier. We've had enough dividers at this point, and it really does need someone to bring everyone together and talk.
It's just not the business model of politics now.
No, it's not.
The business model of politics is completely driven by tribal animosity.
Yes.
And a lot of people put it at Lee Atwater if you go back to when the animosity started cranking up.
Right.
And it's just gotten worse and worse in both parties.
Each guy gets out there, appeals to his base, says if these guys get in power, they're going to do this, this, and this. We need to be very afraid. So they divide us, they pit us against one another, and we just end up butting heads. Meanwhile, I saw a picture on the internet, a meme on Facebook is really great, and it's got Clinton, Obama, and Bush, and they're all arm in arm, and it says, if you think impeaching Obama's the answer, you don't understand the problem. Yeah. And that's exactly it. We have, whether it's Republican or Democrat, there is an establishment in this country, and that's the real problem.
Yeah, they hate each other in the ring, but it's a little bit like professional wrestling, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a league, and they're the only people that are allowed to play. And that's a huge problem.
Do you think the Bernie supporters are going to go away sore?
I think they already have. He almost got booed off the stage at the Democrat National Convention.
Yeah, that was funny.
One thing that, what Ron Paul did was Ron never compromised. And because of that, he was able to build a movement and a base that is his. I'm not saying that I'm a Bernie Sanders supporter, don't get me wrong.
Sure.
Nevertheless, unfortunately, I think so many people are upset that he was not true to what he was saying. Here he is he's going to fight the establishment, going to fight Wall Street, but he endorses. Hillary Clinton gets paid like $100,000.
I think he lost a lot of credibility by not walking out of there.
Yeah, he should have just
picking up the Green Party. I think they offered him the slot, right?
Yeah.
He could have picked up the Green Party ticket and carried on.
For his own purposes, I think he would have become a much more powerful politician than he is now, because now he's just another Democrat. Then he would have been the leader of a movement, granted a socialist movement, but I don't think strategically, politically, that was a really great move for him. Probably maybe for the rest of the country, but not for him.
Well, he's pretty much end of career at this point.
Yeah,
I think it's time for him to fade into the sunset.
Yeah.
So, Glenn, how are you going to inspire these kids?
The kids are going to inspire me. They are. Because they're the future, and they're the brightest stars, and that's what is inspiring. If you look at human history, I think Mises said that history is a story of human beings overcoming oppression. Okay? That's what it is. During the Enlightenment, it's when we first started getting these ideas in Western civilization,
right,
with Locke and his ideas about liberty. And then, of course, you had the American Revolution, where at least rhetorically, that was what sparked the whole thing. These kids are a product of that.
They seem to be carrying the torch.
What we're going to see is it's going to come to fruition, because I have no doubt, I agree with you, I'm a pessimist short term. I think things are going to get very bad, but that's when people start looking for answers, because up until now they haven't needed to look for answers because things have been sort of okay. When things start falling apart, and that's what we're starting to see now, that's when people will look for a new way. Hopefully, it's not the old way of statism and authoritarian. Hopefully, they'll realize what this country was founded on, which is individual liberty, and they'll migrate back to that. But these guys are the ones that are going to take that message out there and make it all happen.
Well, Glenn, thanks so much for coming on and sharing our story with us, and good luck on the stage tonight.
Thank you very much.
That was WWE wrestling star Glenn Kane Jacobs speaking to you from the 2016 Young Americans for Liberty Convention in Washington, D.C., here on Real Clear Radio Hour, brought to you by the Competitive Enterprise Institute. I'm your host, Bill Frezza. You can check out Real Clear Radio Hour on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at Real Clear Frezza. And while you're at it, take a look at RealClearFuture.com for daily updates on the next big wave of technology. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Old Boston Restorations, for their support. Old Boston is a boutique property management company in Boston's South End. Visit them online at oldbostonrestorations.com. That wraps up our show for this week. Please join us next week, same time, same station. See you then.
The Competitive Enterprise Institute is a nonprofit public interest group based in Washington, D.C., promoting innovation and entrepreneurship for a prosperous and peaceful society. Visit CEI.org to learn more.